and welcome to Beyond Barriers Unscripted. This is episode 4. My name's Randy Owen, and today's guest is the program manager for the CareersPLUS program in the Sacramento region, serving blind youth. He also writes the bi-monthly SFB Connection Newsletter. Please welcome Richard Rueda.
Hey, Randy, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it and looking forward to having a fun dialogue.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for taking time out of your evening. I've been looking forward to doing this for a little while. I'm going to hit you with just kind of a out of the left field question.
Let's do it.
If you were going to name a podcast like this, and prior to this, we were discussing something kind of along those lines, what would you name your podcast?
Well, I've got to be honest with you, Randy. I really do like Beyond Barriers, and I think it's good. I think it's to tell you the story. When we were studying the field of transition in CareersPLUS, the program I run at Society, we wanted to keep it positive. And have you ever, when you were younger, get those magazines with those clocks and all the watches, and they were always set to 10, 2:10? Because it made a smiley face. So the whole idea was keeping your program name or your podcast name, something upbeat and positive, something optimistic that people want to look forward to. I like it because it speaks beyond blindness. It speaks to the greater disability community. So at some point in your podcasting, you're going to want to interview April Marie Wick, the head of Resources for Independent Living, and her husband, Paul, who's blind here in Sacramento, as an example. So you might appeal to a wider audience eventually, as things evolve. So I like the name. That's why I like the name, because sometimes if you pigeonhole yourself, then how do you reinvent yourself? So I think you're off to a good start, honestly.
And that's a common theme that just keeps coming up, that word reinvention. What does that mean to you?
I think reinvention in many respects is innovating, planning, keeping yourself really organic, holistic, and looking at the trends, are what's out there, and depending on what your goal is, what your mission is, what your values are as a person, as an employee, as one who contributes to your community, really just identifying how can you best contribute to your community and to yourself to make it a better world. And I think by innovating, by reinventing, you're always out there looking for new opportunities that benefit you and those around you.
So can you tell us a little bit about CareersPLUS? How did it come to be and why?
So CareersPLUS, for those who may not have the visual sense of it, it's careers and then all caps PLUS. For the past 25 years or so, I've worked in the community. I worked in nonprofit sector. I worked for the state for 9 of those years. And my whole thing was working with those who need assistance in getting employment, getting resources to be better themselves, whether they're blind or disabled. And having innovated and having been a part of a lot of programs from the startup, short of being an entrepreneur where I'm out there creating my own business, I've associated with myself with nonprofits, non-for-profit businesses such as Society for the Blind, such as Junior Blind of America, Lighthouse for the Blind, where to be a nonprofit in California, you have to really be on the edge. You really have to be relevant to the community so that people will come and participate with you. So one of the things I have always been a big fan of is working with youth who are blind, like myself, who have had few opportunities to thrive in the community, to get employment, to get part-time jobs, to get the services they need to be competitive. Ultimately, we live in a sighted world where you have to be able to hold your own, pull your straps up, and get out there and get a job. And so many of our students don't have the exposure to the resources that maybe you and I have had. And so, the CareersPLUS was born out of the idea that Sacramento had very little in resources for blind youth. Over the course of the past 15 or so years, prior to 2016, when we initiated Careers Plus, there had been a youth program. There had been brief moments of success with a youth program with Tri-Visual Services, which was a competitor, or I wouldn't say competitor, another service similar to Society for the Blind and Society for the Blind. My whole idea was, let's create something that's going to last and be long lasting, and not something that's going to be flash in the pan or fly by night. So we did a needs assessment, which basically is a survey to the community asking parents and teachers and students who are blind or who work with the blind in the Sacramento region, what's lacking? What can we do to fill those gaps? And out came Careers Plus, a program that helps students identify their successes, their strengths, their challenges, and really challenging them, a program that is built to challenge them to be successful and to go beyond their comfort zone. And that's what Careers Plus is all about. And unlike a lot of other programs statewide and nationwide, Randy, this Careers Plus is free to students, whereas many programs for 16 and 17 and 18-year-old blind students, you have to be a Department of Rehab consumer, which is ultimately our goal, to make sure they're consumers. But we didn't want having not have a rehab case to hold you back. And I think that's what keeps us, stands out from all the others.
I always describe it as services available on demand.
Yes, absolutely. And when I was growing up in Southern California in the 80s, we had, and we still have, Braille Institute. Braille Institute is a behemoth organization with 5 agencies all over the Southern California area, and they have what has been referred to as Hollywood money, people from the 1920s and 30s who gave generously to the Braille Institute. So you didn't have to have a rehab case if you were 5, 10, or 15 years old to go to Braille Institute. And that's not the case with a lot of other nonprofits this day and age. And so I think that's what I really appreciate about Shari Raisler, our executive director, the board of directors, and society, that we don't hold youth back by giving them services they need without having them to expecting them to pay anything.
I the other thing that strikes me about Careers Plus is it's all the things that I wish I would have had when it,
right.
Coming up as a person with low vision in junior high. And I think, to me, and what I've witnessed that makes probably a huge difference, and I want your opinion on this, is just a sense of community, that you're with others. You're not, you're with others that face the same challenge and have the same successes. And I don't know, man. What do you think?
I think we try to be as authentic as possible. Careers Plus really wants to make a difference in the world of that student who thinks he or she is the only blind student in their school, or that blind student who has low self-esteem, or that parent who needs a resource, or that grandparent who's adopted that child and has no idea what it's like to raise a blind kid. We want to make a difference in their lives, and we really want to help them not just survive, but thrive and be successful. As it's been said so many times, the unemployment rate of those who are blind, 18 to 64, is over 70%. That it can fluctuate, but basically it's 70%. That means out of a room of 10 blind people, age 18 or older, only 3 of us are going to be gainfully employed. And so Careers Plus really wants to help raise the expectations of what you do when you're 18.
You used the word competitive earlier, and I really, really love to hear that, because it's competitive out there. You have to. It is. What tool, technique do you feel is most valuable in keeping your clients engaged in the Careers Plus program?
That's a loaded question, and that's a good thing. I have to back up and say that from 2017, when we started programming, we started the research in 2016 until about this March of 2020, prior to the pandemic, all of our programs were exclusively in person, face-to-face. We had never done any virtual Zoom, Google, or Microsoft Team interactions. The closest we came to was over the phone consultation, but everything was in person, face-to-face, and that was great. And we missed that, and we'll get back to that eventually. But I think one of the greatest things, as some will say, the silver lining in the pandemic that we are experiencing, is the connection that we're having now in the past 16, 18 weeks with our students. I think it goes far deeper than it was even in person. We did great things in person, and we've done exceptional things in person, but I think having these 2-hour conversations with our students every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, and the schedule goes to 7:30, but Isabel, my programs assistant, and I end up on the phone with those guys until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, because it's not that they're bored. It's because they want to learn from blind adults who have been successful, who are successful, and they want to hear how you are doing it, how you're getting by. And I think it's the authentic conversations we have, empowering them, and in having them introduced to blind people, not just ourselves, but people like yourselves, George Wurtzel, and other blind people out there. They're super empowered, and they're super excited that they have these forums and outlets and places to vent and listen and participate. And I think this pandemic has brought us closer socially than we have ever done before.
Growing up, now you've had low vision your whole life, is that correct?
Correct.
So growing up, and you're around the same age as me, what do you think I kind of feel the technology has helped to level the playing field for us. And I mean, maybe some people would disagree. What do you think about that statement?
I think in most circles that's true, but there's a couple of things that come to mind, because I think I have even said it, and I've caught it myself. That's a great talking point, and I'm not knocking you at all, Randy, but I think I forget about technology equity. And it really came close to home, because I have a young lady we work with up in Grass Valley who can rarely get on our phone calls because she lives in a rural area. She doesn't have an iPad. She has really bad internet, and even she doesn't have a landline. So she's relying on her mom's iPhone to call into our calls, and we can never get her because it's so spotty. So I think about those in rural areas, or those who don't have access to iPhone or Android technology, or even just adequate internet. And in times like this, they really suffer. And I think we can't forget about those people, and have to come up with ways that we can provide for them. But also, I think we do have technology that's outstanding, but sometimes the blind kids that we get out of the program that I work with and elsewhere, they don't have the literacy skills to be competitive. And I'm not just saying Braille, but a lot of them don't know how to do a paper with Microsoft Word. And so I think that's why training is so important at an earlier age. And I think technology is great, but I think that investment in training needs to be provided just as well as the technology.
With the technology, you dictate something to your phone, but you don't learn the tense of a verb or the different forms of a word. You know what I mean? You'll see people, we're here, and they'll spell it WEAR.
Oh, I know. Case in point, you were mentioning in your introduction, I do the Society for the Blind, otherwise known as the SFB Connection, and I've been doing that for the past year. And I'm far from perfect as an editor. In fact, before it gets published to the 400 people who get it, 2 other people see it and help do some visual stuff. But there's so much editing that goes on with headings and just grammar. And I've learned so much about myself and what I didn't know using Microsoft Word and all the tools built into that I didn't know a year and a half ago. And I'm still learning. I'm still far behind the curve, but it amazes me every week. A lot of time goes into the behind the scenes of putting that together. And I think as a blind person, I'm having to use it with JAWS, and I use a little bit of magnification, and I try to make it as perfect as possible, because I can be a little anal, I can be a perfectionist, but I want it to be the best product possible.
That newsletter is outstanding. You want to just give us a brief description of what that's about, how often it's published, and if somebody wants to get on the mailing list, how do they do that?
Yeah, thank you. So the SFB Connection is the student newsletter version of the agency newsletter that is more promotional and talks to marketing, and it talks about fundraising and all the good things we're doing as an agency. The SFB Connection is the student newsletter that really promotes things that we're doing, our classes, and it also has announcements, things that are relevant to the community. And it was kind of born out of a conversation the core staff had back in late 2018 And I volunteered to do it, and I said, I'll do it. And it was a one-page flyer that turned into, depending on what you use with your screen reader, 18 to 22 pages in a document. I think we have it down to 12 pages, but it's a great document, and it has headings such as staff picks, such as if you had a celebrity sighting. So we tried to make it fun, not just all news. We want it to be like a little Reader's Digest full of just interesting information that keeps the reader reading from finish to start. And I think the biggest complaint I've had, it's too long, but people end up reading it. So I'm thrilled about it.
If somebody wanted to contribute to the newsletter, what do they need to do?
Basically, all you have to do is call or email me. So that information is, my work number is 916-889-7513. My email is rrueda, so that's R, and then another R, U-E, D as in David, A, @societyfortheblind.org.